And here in studio, we have an able panel for our newsroom conversation. We will be dissecting all the stories that I've been told about the SGR project since it began. Michael Gitonga will be driving that conversation.
Thank you, Michelle. And yes, just like you've put it, it's time for the newsroom. It's now just about 29 minutes to 8. And we want to get into the newsroom where we look at, well, what has been making the headlines and whether we have given an objective view and also details of some of those stories. And let me introduce the panel. To my extreme left, we have Koki Ocheng, who's a lecturer on journalism and communication at USIU. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
We have Patrick Gadara, who's a communications consultant and a cartoonist as well. Karibu sana. Last but not least, we have Julie Masiga, who is a journalist. Thank you for joining us this morning. Let's start off with the SGR, because obviously that's what is the main thing making headlines today locally. And looking at the information we have, the story we have of the SGR, we have several issues that have come up. We have the environmentalists who are against it going through certain parts of the country. We also have the issue that has been raised severally of the cost vis-a-vis the benefits that we're going to get. Let me start with you, Gadara, in terms of does the Kenyan really know what the SGR is for them in terms of benefits or even the cost to them?
Well, I think there has been quite a lot of articulation of what the cost is. I think we're running around 400 billion for the section from Mombasa to Nairobi. But I don't think there is much talk about what else is there and what the alternatives were. Everybody would probably have heard about the World Bank report that said there's no economic case for SGR. And what it was saying is essentially you can refurbish what you had already and get the same performance that you're getting from SGR. So why are you spending 400 billion when you'd have spent probably about 20 billion or so? You know, I haven't had much discussion about that. You know, I also think when it comes to issues of the linkages of the SGR to the rest of East Africa, because part of the idea was to move goods from Mombasa all the way across and spread them too. And there's questions about that as well, whether they're going to use our railway or they're going to use Tanzania's railway. Lots of them are signing up to go through Tanzania. And it seems to me not to make much sense to build a railway to Naivasha and then, or to Kisumu, let's say, and then just ship Kenyan goods, you know. It's not going to make much sense, much economic sense. So I think that we've kind of shied away from discussing the specifics
and specifics
of SGR, and we've been taken up by the whole hype of it. It is being presented as this modern thing, you know, we'll have these bullet trains running on it. What we have doesn't really look like a bullet train, you know, to me. And then secondly, also when it comes to about what we're trying to do, you know, everybody talks about these huge speeds and stuff. Nobody ever moves cargo at those speeds. And we've seen even our cargo won't be going at that speed, you know. If our trains are going to be doing something like 80 kph on it, you know, you've got to ask for the cost that what we are spending. The economist said that essentially we are getting a third-rate railway for the cost of a very expensive one.
Okay.
And those are issues that I think we need to see, to rail down and not just be taken up by the whole hubbub of, you know.
Okay. Koki, your thoughts on it and the fact that we sometimes dwell so much on the negative. Have we even highlighted, if there's any positive, the positives that it may have?
I think it's a bit nostalgic when you talk about train for people who were born much earlier, because they used to use the train a lot. So for them, it might be a sentimental move. I mean, to take the train from one place to another. But I think the connection between infrastructure and the Vision 2030 needs to be looped in spite of the expense that has been used to put the railway down. It's important that somehow we are following our blueprint of development in the next 30 years. That would be a good story to tell it. The utility of it will be a question that we would like to ask, because if you're going to talk about passengers, as we are seeing the story today, that it's going to have passenger services, the question is how frequent will people be going to the coast Is it viable for people ever to work in Nairobi and go to Mombasa? Will it be viable for people to work in different locations and still arrive in Mombasa or, the destination of choice based on the speed of the railway, as we say? So those are some of the things that we need to interrogate. Likewise, we can also interrogate from another angle, in so much as other countries would like to use other railway routes. Is there efficiency in their systems, for example, at the ports? Could we beat them at that in terms of efficiency? Is it going to be something they'll try to do in those other countries but still come back to Kenya? Because of, I know the mission of our port is to be the top 20 world ports. So those are the questions that probably we should be posing
out. All right, Julie, your thoughts on the SGR and the fact that I don't know if you'd feel that so far it has taken more the political side of it than the practical.
Yeah, I think so far we've been talking about, of course, the cost and the value it's going to bring to the people of Kenya. But now we're here now, we have it. We should look at it as something that's going to function going forward. Of course, it's going to cut traveling times almost in half. The cost is going to go down. So in that sense, it's going to be more efficient. But then it's cost so much money. So does the end justify the means? Given that Ethiopia has an electric speed train, a cross-border speed train that connects Ethiopia and Djibouti, which is twice as long as our SGR and costs the same amount of money. So it seems like we spent a whole lot of money creating something that might not bring us that much value. But where we are now, the proof is in the pudding. People need to test out this new train. See, like Koki says, that it's going to help you. Can you work in Mombasa and live in Nairobi, which is unlikely? 4 hours is a long time. 900 bob for one trip is also a lot of money. So in terms of the practicalities of the thing, and also the distances of the stations from people's actual workplaces, in Nairobi it's at Syokimau. If you're coming from Mombasa to Syokimau, then you have to connect to town. All these kind of logistics, we're going to find out.
We're going to find out.
Yeah.
And maybe now as a journalist, this is where we should be asking the question. We know that Jubilee is using that as their campaign, almost tagline. This is what, Kenyans are going to benefit. What questions should we be asking them? So for the benefit of Kenyans, we only have 60-something days to go before we get to the election.
Yeah.
And we should really be putting them on the spot in some of the things they say.
We should be, and one of the things is we acquired a massive amount of debt for this SGR, and I like to say that we've mortgaged the future of our children, because if you have a child today, they have a 70,000 shilling debt on their head already on day one. So to do all this fanfare, which didn't even turn out to be a very fancy train, we've borrowed so much money. The Chinese have given us the money, they've built the train, they're going to run this train for 10 years. Where are the Kenyans in this picture? Because the same government said they were going to create jobs for Kenyans. So in that sense, the utility we're going to get from this SGR might be much less than the cost. And I know Jubilee likes to say the end justifies the means. Look, now we have a train, it's going to do all these marvelous things, but the cost has been rather high for the people of Kenya, and I don't think they should take that as a success.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe a story that they should highlight is before, like in the 70s, the economy of Kenya was run based on the railway. Yeah. So if we could look at it from that avenue, that there are ways we could probably raise that 70,000 debt per person based on the railway as it is now, it could be a good argument. But generally, just before elections and posing it as fanfare kind of thing, I think it will not really be seen to be of benefit in that light.
All right. I want us to move on to something else.
Yeah, but I think we really need to disaggregate issues. I think we need to take them apart. As you say, it's true that the railway is there now, and we've got to deal with that. I think everybody now, whether you agree with it or not, obviously I didn't, we've got to deal with the fact that it's there, and then how do we use it? So I think we're going to think about, to really think about how do we actually try and sort of fashion a success, if you will, out of the situation that we have. But that shouldn't stop us looking back and asking, how did we get to this point? How did we allow ourselves to be railroaded into accepting, yeah, well, sorry for the pun, but into accepting a deal that is obviously so skewed, obviously so uneconomical for us, that makes there's no economic case, is what the World Bank said, for it, And to go back and ask, why did we do that? And how do we avoid ourselves, this happening to us again with other projects? Because there's always going to be if we allow this to go just like that, we create a precedent where they will think, just do it. And then Ukombele will say, well, it's already here, then, what can you do?
Yeah. All right, moving on now to other stories that have been making headlines. And of course, we do know that we have the presidential candidates who now have been cleared by IEBC. But looking at maybe how we've covered this and some of the headlines that we have run, and maybe I'd like us to just look at some of the headlines that were there in the Daily Nation as they were clearing. We obviously have been accused as the media of being biased. There has been a narrative of a two-horse race, whereas we did host two presidential candidates yesterday and they said, who says that it's a two-horse race? Who came up with that narrative that it's a two-horse race? And I'm waiting for those headlines to be displayed so that we have a basis to have the conversation. But as they continue to line them up, I guess they'll show them up as we go on. Maybe I'll start with you, Koki. Have we been unfair? And is it possible to create an agenda around the two-horse race narrative, whereas maybe it's not really a two-horse race?
Yeah, I think that the argument would be, are there other players of consequence, or are there other players or other presidential candidates that can bring in a dynamic that was unexpected? I would expect that the media would focus more on the three, I think, presidential candidates from one ethnic group that might seem inconsequential, but could that have impact? I would also expect the new players like Ekuro, is it called Ekuro?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, what is it? What is it that they have seen? And of course, Professor, who we have been here with often, what is his narrative and what is his agenda? Because again, it might seem obvious that there are these big forces because of the might, the financial might, the ability to mobilize people, but does that translate to a vote? It might be insignificant what they eat out of the voting pattern, but it might demonstrate that these candidates who have just come in have something up their sleeves, because I don't believe you would be independent for no apparent reason.
Okay, and the question here being, I wish you had seen those headlines, but it was something like Uhuru cleared and Raila cleared. Whereas we are having a very unique election this time, because we have the highest number of independent candidates, we have the highest number of presidential candidates. Shouldn't that be a bigger story than what we've always had? Gadara, maybe your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not sure it's the highest number of presidential candidates we ever had. I think we had 9 last time.
Yeah.
Well, we had 10 to start with, and they were whittled down to 8 this time.
I think the whole narrative of a two-horse race is actually a reflective of reality, and we shouldn't, as media, run away from reality. All the polls that have been done and all we know from our history is it's really going to boil down to a fight between Uhuru and Raila. Now, people might not like us saying this, but that is the truth, and part of the role of the media
decides that
is
to
to
be
say
the fact?
truth. Well, it is. I mean, you can do your polling, you can look at your history. We can't really ignore what we know just because we want to say.
But I think the media reinforces kind of like the cliche and the stereotype.
When you've got a poll that says these guys have like 47 and 42% of the vote, you really got to ask yourself.
What if you just switch the narrative and start talking about the camel and the ostrich?
As opposed to the two horses.
And again,
I really think if we're to discuss, all our discussions have to be grounded on the reality of things. Now, in the last election, you had people like Budavadi running it. You see, they were seen as also being part of, of being a significant factor in this. I've seen nothing to suggest that any of the 6 other guys will be significant factors when people decide who they are going to vote for. If that evidence is put forward, then by all means, let's report it. But let's not assume that it is there. Let's go and look for it, but I highly doubt we'll get it. But there's one thing I really wanted to say about the whole reporting around this. And for me, one of the really disturbing things is the use of public resources to campaign and how our media is actually abetting this, is accepting it. You're running ads from PDU, the Presidential Delivery Unit, which is a government agency paid for by taxpayers, that are saying you should vote for Uhuru Kenyatta in essence. They are campaigning for Uhuru Kenyatta, and you're running it. So in the sense, our media has no standing now to start arguing about corruption and stuff, because it is abetting it. It is abetting that abuse. And I think as ourselves, we really need to introspect and look at what we are doing and how we are enabling some of these things to happen. Right now, before they had told us, oh, government can speak till when the campaign period is declared. Well, from 28th it was declared. You're still running the ads. And what is PDU
but those
doing?
Ads don't directly.
The ads say Jubilee delivers. Jubilee is not government.
Well, but Gadara,
the ads say Uhuru 2017. Yesterday,
Gadara,
there was an ad by PDU where Uhuru stands and says that give us another 5 years to do this. What is that if not campaigning?
On the one hand, you're saying that the media shouldn't frame the narrative. On the other hand, you're blaming the media for running
accepting.
For running, flagrantly illegal ads. That's what you're doing. You're running them. You should be standing and saying, sorry, people, this is illegal.
Okay.
I think that would be more like of a media owner's discussion versus a fourth estate.
Precisely. Akoki, you wanted to say something, weighing in on that.
No, I still feel that it is these two horse race narratives are based in theoretical underpinnings. It's not just that media wakes up and positions two people to face that. Of course, we have the element of framing, where the media has the right to be objective. You have the journalistic objectivity, which you can use, but then you can still have the ability to kind of create salience over dominant issues, which we can say that if you give these independent candidates and a space, like it says, to come and articulate what they're saying as frequently as possible, we can be able to now say, okay, this is an alternative probably, and just not dwell on that, because I don't think the dynamics of Kenya politics has remained as it was before 2010, because here we are really, really focusing, not in such an elitist manner or an educated manner, but we are focusing on what is the development that's coming in from whichever government that we want to.
All right, Julie, of course, the politicians would want us to skew the conversation in a certain way in their favor. Yeah. And for many of them, of course, the two-horse race becomes a very good narrative, because then you only have two people to worry about in terms of who's going to take. But what's our responsibility? Is ours to agree with that narrative? Or can we say that, yes, there are two people who have been there for a long time, politically speaking, but there's another group of people here that you cannot ignore. And at the end of the day, it is the people who are the arbiter. They're the ones who decide.
Yes, I agree with you completely. I think
Hopefully.
They do.
In an ideal world.
We saw it with the Kabogos of this world. Yeah, they decide.
If you listen to...
no, let her first come. I'll come together, because I know you want to now say again and bring in IBC, but go ahead.
No, I think that the media has a responsibility to give every candidate a fair platform. What we're doing now, we're giving the two horses undue mileage. They're not working that hard for their votes, because they know every single day they're going to be on all the papers, Raila versus Uhuru. There are 6 other people in the race. There are all manner of other candidates who are involved in this election, and we're ignoring them. I think we should take advantage of the whole independent wave of people running as independents and give people a voice to be heard. Let the people...
And a breath of fresh air, something different.
Let's just, like I said, flip the script and stop the old narrative of there can only be 2 candidates in this game. and just actively seek out the people who are not in the limelight to give people a broader
Do you
choice
think
of
we'd be
people.
able to sell? Because at the end of the day, we also need to sell. If you had a headline there with the Kurokot, in his manifesto as the headline, as opposed to having Raila Odinga,
Probably
in a campaign in...
If
Of
you
course,
make people used to it, get
Yeah.
people used to the idea that you should not only have Uhuru and Raila on the cover.
What will happen? What will be the worst case scenario if this one day the headline is independent? The independent.
The worst that
speak?
would happen is that
I don't
maybe
think
the
there
paper
will
will
be
not sell as well.
a crisis in the media industry for one day or so.
I mean, I think for me, there are two things. First, my argument about saying the media should reflect reality is not to say that you shouldn't get the other guys. I think you really need to, but also the basis on which you focus on them. Very much our media reports on personalities. So it's Raila versus Uhuru, not about the ideas Raila has versus the ideas Uhuru has. And this is where our independent candidates, if they actually were able to come up and produce, better compelling ideas, would actually merit a serious coverage. If they were to introduce into the debate something more than just a continuation of what we keep getting from these two major parties.
But I also think people don't actually read the papers. I think people read headlines a lot. Because if you read the paper, even today, in fact, this entire week, there have been Raila Uhuru headlines, but then I think the press has gone above and beyond to dig into what are you offering us? What are the issues? What are you arguing about? Why is one better than the other? I think the coverage is actually becoming a bit more in-depth, even as the headlines remain sensational. Again, the reality is Kenyans want, like Mushene, let me put it like that.
And I'm not sure if it's just Kenyans or it's
Generally, yeah.
Yes, but behind the headlines, there's a lot of substance, especially in the past month. There's been a lot of substance in the context, in the inside pages, even on TV and radio. People are actually wanting to know, Raila, if you're saying you're better than Uhuru, what are you bringing to the table? And vice versa.
Yeah, but I'm saying, now for me, that might be happening with the main and I don't think it's happening to the extent I'd want. But if I'm running as an independent, I would hope that I've got a compelling idea that's driving my campaign that I can push, and then that would merit media guys going into this. And when it comes to covering all of these guys, unfortunately, I find a lot of times we tend to parrot the figures that they give us, and not necessarily go behind them, and to also start looking at the visual. So, for example, who has costed the Jubilee Manifesto, wherever it is, who has costed what CORD is saying when these guys stand up and they say, we'll give you free education till fourth form, Two questions. How much will that cost? Then secondly, changing the bloody system. There would be a fourth form.
But I think those debates can be carried out in the media spaces with other people coming in as experts to, a kind of give
the media
depth
to
to
give
them.
those guys the
Exactly.
space where they can
So
talk.
what I'm proposing is, yes, you have their manifestos and their ideas at your exposure, but breaking them down would be the role of the media to get into depth of each one of those issues and to make sure that I can see what you are doing with Boniface here, that he says that, what he says is implementable and he has insights as to how it will happen. Not so much like just say we will provide this and not, articulate
how
what
it's
the
going to be done.
mechanics, because it's important for people to understand the mechanics behind delivery. And as we go along, I can promise you in the next 5 years, Kenyans will want delivery.
Yeah.
They will not want stories. They will want to see. They watch and wait and observe, and they will want delivery.
Okay, and another challenge that we're likely to have, we have the presidential debates coming up, and by all virtue means, time is expensive, airtime is expensive, and as a result, would like to give the electorate a very fair opportunity to listen out to their potential presidents. But now, when we have it spread thin over so many, it either means we'd have to do them in segments, do different presidents on different days, which of course would not be ideal, or do it on the same day, but now spread it thin. How do we now, as the media, bring 2, 3 horse, 4 horse, I don't know, whatever number of candidates? Because when we have all of them, without disregarding or downplaying any of them, then it definitely brings down the quality of the debate.
No, I think you sell the presidential debate as a product. I mean, have people advertise during that segment, have people contribute to the cost. Because at the end of the day, it's like public service. You are bringing in people who basically will talk about their agenda. It would be relevant if, yes, you could break it, but still, it would be important that we see them, you know, come out together and probably in teams and eventually come together. Because at the end of the day, that had a great impact on the elections last time.
Right.
So it's important that these people actually face us and tell us. And the media, of course, being in charge, you can always solicit people to advertise.
To paint that. Let me just hold you a little bit as we release KTN Home, who now are going to change over to Life and Style. But for those of us on KTN News, we continue with this conversation in the newsroom. So for those of us on KTN Home, goodbye. If you'd like to continue with this conversation, let's move over to KTN News. All right, sorry, Gadara.
Yeah, I think the media should go back to 2013 and look at that format and ask what
did we do right? And
we had 9 people on the podiums then. You know, I think it was actually quite a productive podiums for, opportunity for the smaller candidates, for not to call it small, the less well-known candidates, Dida being a good example of them, to actually stand out. You know, over there. So I really wouldn't change that. I don't think you should split it and say, let's have one for the big boys and another a small table for the other guys. You know, let's have them all on one podium. But the more important thing is the issues you're going to push during that debate. On what basis is the debate going to be carried around? You know, and I think you need to really look for moderators of those debates who are well versed and well ingrained in the issues that need to be answered, you know, so that we don't have people coming over there and all they tell us, oh, it's just a personal challenge and let's move on, you know, which is what happened last time. You know, but we can actually drill deep into those, and more importantly, drill deep into the ideas that are being put forward. You know, what is it these guys want to do? What is their actual plan for doing it? Do they intend to raise taxes? Will they not raise taxes? Will they then pay for ETC? You know, what do they do about that? What will they do with the SGR now that it is here? Some of the questions, like Yvonne Okwara was asking yesterday, you know, when she was interviewing Kurokot, I thought were really good questions. Those are the sort of things that I would want to see being put to candidates, not just at the debates, but in any interviews that they go for. Going forward.
Yeah, I think, just before we move on, I think that's very important. Who probes the presidential candidates must have the substance and must be able to articulate the issues clearly and in a way that those candidates are tasked to answer them, so that it's not just, okay, I'm
just glossing over things.
Yes, and I am renowned and etc. It is more about the training. Is this person good at hard talk? Can he deliver?
Okay. Julie?
I think going to Gadara's point, that's what you're talking about. If you have 8 people on stage and you want to go into the issues, you might not be able to because there are many people and the time is limited. But I also think that these debates in the end become a battle for eloquence. It's not so much about the issue, it's about how do you express yourself. You can be saying anything because we've had a lot of propaganda and rhetoric, which will probably happen at the debate again, but the people will be drawn to are the ones who can express themselves and convince us. Because the time is limited, the people are many, delving into the issues will not be easy. You'll have to have quick wins. You'll have to be able to express yourself.
But it still goes back to the preparation.
It does go back to preparation, but then if you stammer and you stutter and you have very good points and you're really prepared, but you cannot put them across in a way that people relate with you, then it's you fail.
But I think, again, we shouldn't see the debates in isolation. They're just a pinnacle of an entire system of questioning candidates.
It's true, but
so they'll be having other fora, whether it's interviews, etc., going across.
One-on-one.
You know, so there are many opportunities, I think, for guys to clarify thought. I think we've kind of wasted the whole primaries a bit, by again, focusing on personalities, not on ideas. But I think we still have opportunity between now and the debates to really drill down on what are these people offering. You know, what are they actually saying? and have all those interviews, ask them all those hard questions. So when it comes to the debate, even them, they've had a chance to clarify what their thoughts are.
But I think the
and they have no excuse when they get up there not to know what they're talking about.
But the debate is this national platform where people actually have in their minds, this is one event where we're going to make almost a final decision about who we're going to support.
No, but
the very nature of it.
Yeah, I miss the time when at least the media went down to the grassroots again, because then that still widens their agenda. It demonstrates what is the glue that puts these people together, if it's a party, what is their position. I mean, it gives us a wider scope. And like he says, we're not just going to wait for the debate to see those candidates. We want to hear more about them as frequently as possible.
All right.
And I also think, and this is where, again, devolution kind of helps you guys out, because in 2013, you still had like national government governing everything.
Yeah.
Now there are certain specific things that the national government is tasked to do. And these guys, the presidents at least, or presidential candidates, are running for national office. And their deal should be, how do they then run national government?
Exactly.
And you might have questions about their relationship to county governments, etc.
Exactly.
But really, the questions that you ask them are about what the constitution tasks the national government to do.
All right.
And one more question. I think the key question is to ask those who are, the main players, what have the governors in their court done? So that it's,
those who have governors, because now we do have some who don't actually have governors, and may not even have members of parliament. And of course, there's a question of how they're going to move anything in parliament. But now, as we wind up, we also have a report that came out for the Ministry of Education that was basically blaming the media for the fires and, what happened. And the reason why I think this is important to also just look at as we wind up is because we were blamed as the media for fanning the fires in the schools, but also we have an election that's coming up that could be potentially, we could have violence depending on how things go and how people, and how we also have their coverage. So let me start with you, Julie, maybe on your comments on regarding now the fact that you were just reporting what schools are doing. But according to that report, media was glorifying some of those events.
Yeah, I read that. I don't think that media glorified. I think what he meant was, in some cases, media got it wrong. I think in a few cases, they said that there was a fire when there was no fire. They said there was an unrest when there was no unrest.
So it's inaccurate reporting.
Inaccurate reporting, not necessarily fanning the fires. But then again, there were children involved. Perhaps the media should have taken a bit of a more reserved approach to how they were covering these events, because you're dealing with minors. But I do think that the responsibility of the media is to report the facts and to report the news, which they did at that point. Of course, there were some errors which were made, but errors are made. In terms of the election, I think in 2013, the media was too muted. The whole narrative of peace was so strong that nothing came, no real facts came through. I think this time we need to be cognizant that they might.
Could that have been the reason why there was not as much flaring up as 2007 and 2008?
Yes,
which would indirectly mean that we were responsible for 2007, 2008?
No, it's a weird thing where in 2013 there was a tacit agreement not to kind of be real about anything, to kind of couch everything in this narrative of we are not going to fight, we are peaceful people, therefore we're not interrogating issues. In 2007, 2008, I don't think the media could have anticipated what was going to happen. It was almost unprecedented in the history of this country, so the way we covered that was just the way we covered that.
Okay, Gatara?
Yeah.
Well, I think first on the fires thing, there is a history to school fires that dates back all the way to the 60s, 70s. Is not really articulated, we don't talk about. It is really just sweeping things under the carpet to say that the fires are happening because the media reports them. That is not true. There are ingrained issues, ingrained problems and systemic problems within our schools. And these fires have been happening. There have been reports about them, done from the 60s. I would really urge people to go and get them. They're available online, So, and let's have a much more nuanced and informed discussion about why these things happen, rather than just seek sort of to hide issues, or to hide behind sort of blaming the press for reporting it. When it comes to reporting the election, the entire peace narrative, I don't think that, I think after 2007, there was a push to reform the election. And if you look at the figures and the polling about the IEBC going into 2013 election, there was really high credibility, there was really high expectations that they would deliver a credible election. And that was partly why you didn't have the elections. I mean, violence. You did have some violence, but not as much as you'd had in previous elections. You know, so I wouldn't put that on the media, and I think that a lot of the reasons why media did not do its job in 2013 was that it had owned the failure of 2007. It had sort of been co-opted into the blame game, and we told that somehow violence happened because you reported the truth, and that let's sit back, let's not say
Let's
something.
not talk about it.
Let's not talk about things because it is the question that brings violence. So the fact that the election is stolen, you know, it is our questioning that stealing
the flames.
is what causes the violence. That is untrue.
It's the other way around.
And it's wrong. It's the other way around. So I think this time we should be we should be, again, to use the word, railroaded into that. We need to see that peace is a result, you know, comes from the delivery of a credible election. It is actually a lot of times the lack of credibility of the election that drives the violence. Secondly, most of the violence is organized, is pre-organized by your politicians. And the question is, what is the state doing to stop that? In 2007, we had reports going way before about people being armed and stuff. State did nothing, you know. So this time we should be asking, you know, if violence does occur, was the state prepared for it? You know, did they try to mitigate it? Did we
and I
try
guess we
to
should
deliver
actually
an
be
election?
asking those questions
Those are the
now.
questions
What
we should be asking
preparations
now,
are in place?
precisely.
All right,
Not
Koki,
keep quiet.
your closing comments because of time in regards to that.
Basically, the media has a responsibility to talk about issues of violence, extremism. I think that's just important. And like I said last week, it's more about what is your social responsibility to the society. But like my colleagues are saying, really failures that are systemic, for example, in schools or in education or with the electoral bodies or with the police, should not be absorbed or, you know, by the media. At the end of the day, the business of media is to report facts and to make sure they're accurate, to tell something that's newsworthy, and to follow up on issues that they think are of public interest. So I think that the media should thrive on making sure that stories are told. If there are discrepancies between what is expected and what is happening, then that story needs to be told. If the ministry feels that the media contributed, I think they should be asking the question more whether the media participated in going to actually ban the schools. I mean, that's just not an argument that we should take lying down.
All right, thank you very much. We'll have to wind up there because of time. That's the newsroom. Thank you very much. Koki Ochieng, who's a lecturer at USIU in journalism and communication. Patrick Gadhara, who is a cartoonist and a communication consultant. And Julie Masiga, who is a journalist. Thank you for joining us in the newsroom.